Everyone, thanks for joining for today's webinar. So for today's webinar, we're going to discuss about how to transform your data strategy using the intent data. So I will join by Arjun Pillai. So just a context about the webinar. In the rapidly evolving world of data-driven marketing, we as marketers and business leaders are grappling with key questions like how do we identify the most valuable data for our campaigns, and what is the secrets to transforming raw data into actionable insights. So those are the things that we're going to cover in this webinar. But I'd like also to introduce our guest, Arjun Pillai. Arjun is co-founder and CEO of Blackit Inc. Arjun is also a widely recognized leader in the sales tech and marketing spaces with a focus on data strategy. He is a serial entrepreneur with 2 successful exits and is currently on his third venture. Congrats on that, Arjun. Arjun is also recently the Chief Data Officer at Zoom Info. Beyond Arjun business achievement, he's also engaged with the broader tech and startup community as an advisor, mentor, and speaker. He is also an investor in 19 startups and LP in several VC funds. If I miss something, Arjun, you can go ahead and continue with your topic, if you will.
No, that was pretty good. The only thing I would add is my first company was a sales intelligence company. So, I've been in the data space for more time than I guess I talk about.
All right. So let's kick this off, Arjun. So since we will be talking about the data and how we could be able to help marketers and business alike to be able for them to transform their data-driven strategy. So my first question is going to be, I know the past 10 to 20 years, the data or the marketing landscape has changed. And with this change, the data landscape also evolved with the marketing over the past decade. So what do you think are the driving forces behind this evolution and how important it is for B2B marketers today's landscape?
Yeah. Yes, in the past 10 years, things have changed a lot. Being a data first is kind of like we have evolved to a point where you have to be data first. The reason is pretty straightforward. There are a couple of trends that are the reasons for this transformation. Back in 2000, when the SaaS was just kicking off, right, there were very, very few companies that were doing something in SaaS, starting from Salesforces of the world. But what happened is over the past, from 2000 to 2010 or 2013, in the past 10 years, it is pretty easy to create a software. Again, pretty easy in the sense that to build something, there are services out there. You can build new companies and new products pretty well. And what that has caused is for any given problem statement, there are at least 5 really good companies that are solving that problem. We talked about chat, right? There are like 5 companies solving chat as a problem. Email marketing, there are like 20 companies solving that problem. So take any problem, there are tens of companies solving that problem. And what that means is all these companies are now trying to reach out to the same buyer, right? And that saturated. And so that was the first trend, right? SaaS exploding and the number of companies serving the same problem increasing quite a bit, actually exponentially growing. On the other side, back in 2013 is when outreach kind of started doing whatever they are doing. The channels that were usually done through mass emailing through the marketers and HubSpots of the world started coming into the more of the SDR, sales development representatives driven personal emails, and outreaches, sales logs of the world kind of enabled that to happen a lot more easier than historically possible. And that saturated the channels even further. So if you look at both of these things, there are more people trying to sell to the same buyer, and there are easier ways to reach out to the buyer through a bunch of common channels that all of these guys are using. So the amount of saturation that has happened is tremendous right now. So that is why there has to be a change in how you approach to the buyer, because otherwise you are just creating more noise. The stats that I really like is you have a TAM, total addressable market. At any point in time, there is probably like 3% to 5% of your TAM that is in the buying phase or like considering you're buying in the next 3 to 6 months, right? So 95% of your TAM is not buying, is probably not even thinking about you, right? If you don't look at the right data, what happens is you are just writing emails and sending ads and then making phone calls to this 95% of the group for whom this is just noise. They don't care about it. It's not on their priority list.
Right.
The other 5%, you have to be super data driven to get to that 5%, which is where most of the companies are failing. And that is why this noise is getting created, right? So if you reach out to me when I'm looking to buy something, that is not noise. I want to talk to you. But at any other given point in time, you reach out to me with a 9 email sequence, that is pure noise to me, right? So I think those two trends coupled with this buying habit is what has been the big trend, and that is what makes the world to be a lot more data driven, or it has to be. It is not, it has to be.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out that, Arjun. When I was actually working with a data provider before, so what most of the organization, the reason why most of the organization reach out to us because they would like to get one is we have the data sets. And number two is we could be able to provide both the demographic, psychographic, and firmographic and behavioral data that they would like to explore. But just like what you have said, because of these trends and changes in the marketing and how the customers are engaging now with the businesses, how do you think the business would take or would leverage the intent data? Because a lot of organizations are defining intent data. One is, can you first identify based on what you have seen, what is really an intent data? And if an organization are going to build, let's say they have a town list, and they would like to incorporate the intent data, what is the best way in doing that?
Yeah. So intent data or like signal based data, right? There is some signal out there that is telling you that there is a propensity to buy, and that's what you term as intent data. The the broad definition of intent and the components of what you call as intent data has been moving quite a bit in the past, let's say 5 to 8 years. I think it was probably ZoomInfo who kind of came out to the market with this intent data powered by the certain methods. The thing about intent data is, and it's a complicated topic, so let me try to touch a few points here. The first thing about intent data is different intent data are and can be different. So depending on the source from which you are deriving the intent, the data will look very different. For example, if you are taking the intent from the bitstream data based on what people are reading in a pseudo-anonymized fashion, if you are trying to figure out what a company is reading. So imagine that, let's take Okta as a company. Okta has been reading about cybersecurity a lot more in the past 2 weeks than the weeks before. Then that means that there is potentially a propensity for them to look at a cybersecurity offering, right? That's how you derive a bitstream kind of an intent. Versus a company like G2, what is happening is a bunch of people from Okta are going to G2 and comparing different cybersecurity companies. That is even stronger intent, right? So the first one was this very, very top of the funnel intent where Okta has just started reading about something. So that's like top of the funnel intent. Versus if they are comparing between different vendors on G2 and clicking through a couple of links and going into the vendor website, the problem is identified, the solution is identified, they are in the vendor choice, right? At that point, it's a much more bottom of the funnel intent. There are other things like technographics. Companies do create intent based on technographics. If somebody had implemented CRM 2 years back, and if they are hiring a couple of new people in marketing, or if they just hired a VP of marketing, it means that there is a chance that they will buy a marketing automation tool. That's a different kind of an intent, right? So depending on the source from which you derive the intent, there is job postings based intent, there's bitstream, all these intent will be different in the way it works. And let me tell you some of the mistakes people do. The top of the funnel intent, it means that they are at a very, very early stages of their buying process. So if you pick up the phone, call them up and say, hey, I am from XYZ, do you want to buy my thing? They are not quite there yet, right? So when they are at the top of the funnel, they are still at the marketing phase. You can send ads to them. You can invite them for a webinar. You can engage them in a booth. You can invite them at a conference. You can do all of those things. But picking up the phone and saying that, hey, I saw you browsing, so you should buy, that wouldn't work. So the way in which you incorporate intent data is first by understanding which phase do you want to hit with intent. Is your problem at the top of the funnel where you're not getting enough leads? Then you have to go and find an intent provider who is at the top of the funnel. If your job is to find even more bottom of the funnel, then you go find an intent provider who can give you, bottom of the funnel intent. And based on which intent provider that you choose, then you couple your marketing and sales activities corresponding to that. If you are taking top of the funnel intent, then you send ads, then you put them into nurtures, like you do those kinds of things. If you are taking a bottom of the funnel intent, then you put them into LinkedIn outreaches and cold calls and email outreach, cold email outreach through SDRs. So that's how you choose which is the intent that you want, choose the intent provider, then choose the corresponding channels and activations that corresponds to the intent that you just chose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, since you mentioned about the tofu, the bofu, in the middle of the funnel. So when it comes to orchestrating and leveraging intent data, you mentioned about verifying where the data sources are. Now, I'd like also to ask you, because a lot of organizations right now, especially with the ongoing data policy, like Google is now trying to eliminate about the cookies and such. So if if an organization are going to rely on the intent data and then mix it over to their let's say TAL or TAM list, how should the marketing team empower the sales team to use this data at the most capable way?
Yeah. One of my theses has been that, you should stop thinking about marketing and sales as different things. So one of the things that when I was at Zoom Info, we used to do is think about things as unified funnel, as we called it. Like it's one funnel that marketing and sales is basically acting on. You're probably acting at different phases, but it's still one funnel. So the way to do it really well, like align your marketing and sales really well, is to use intent data or any other kinds of data that you're using to reach on the same account target list. Because the quality of your starting list will decide pretty much, your open rate, your reply rate, your meeting rate, and your conversion, like close one or close loss rate, right? So that depends on the account target list that you choose. So what you do is you take your TAM, you put your basic filters. One of the other mistakes that companies do is they think that intent is intent, and they will just take their TAM, which could be, let's say some companies have a TAM of 60,000 companies in the US, like any B2B company, with over 250 employees or something like that. So there are like 60,000 of them in the US, right? So you take that 60,000 companies and then you layer on intent on top of it. And you're like, oh, I got like, I don't know, 15,500 companies. I'm going to market to all of these guys. I'm going to sell to all of these guys. The mistake is just because you put an intent layer on top of your TAM, it's not going to bring your funnel to, like very focused. You have to still put your basic filters. And the basic filters will be things like, the location of the companies that you're targeting. Do you have more uptick on, that's the new Apple's feature where, it can find reaction. Interesting. So like, do you sell more to California versus New York, right? Or do you sell more to Midwest? So put your right location. What are the titles that you're targeting? You should put those. Like the buying committee, you should absolutely always put your buying committee filters. You put your right employee range or revenue range. You put your technographics filter. So you have to put all of your basic filters to bring down your TAM to something more achievable from a customer segment, ideal customer persona standpoint. And from there, you put your intent. So then your 60,000 will come down to something more like 800 or 1200 or something like that, right? That's when you actually have an actionable list. It could even be 100, for all you like. If you're a smaller company, 100 account target list is probably good for a quarter. I don't know. So That's one mistake that people do. So if you take the time, put your basic filters to get to your ICP, the right account fit, then you put the intent, and then you get the account target list. Then you get marketing and sales in the same conference room or the same Zoom call. Share the account target list and say, do we agree on this thing? Do we agree that if we market to these people and this buying committee, do you think sales will you be able to follow up? Here are the strategies that we are going to use. We are going to do email content syndication. We are going to put a booth at this conference. We are going to send them emails, all of these things. And then we'll hand it off at this point to you as an NQL. Would you be willing to work with us with this account target list? You negotiate, you agree on the account target list by picking a few out, bringing a few in, agree on that, and then go do your orchestration on top of that. That is how you can bring together a pretty good account list and then deliver good value of revenue at the end of the funnel.
I like how you put it, Arjun. I think that is a good way to be able for us to reach out with the right audience, if you will. Now, I'm also curious to know because organization is also using the toolkit called ABM, right? So they would like to identify about 50 or 100 companies, and then they would also engage the sales team to see how they could be able to drive engagement with that. But if you're going to leverage intent data plus the ABM, do you think that that would be, I would say, the best arsenal an organization could have in order for them to be successful?
So see, ABM or account-based marketing or account-based sales, ABS or ABM or ABX, account-based experiences, whatever you call it. Basically, that goes down to the account list that we were talking about, right? Instead of targeting and spraying and praying to hundreds of thousands of companies or even thousands of companies, you are bringing down your account target list and hitting that company as a buying committee rather than spraying it to like 30,000 people randomly across 30,000 companies. Now, what does that mean? ABM has several flavors to it. There is a 1:1 kind of a flavor where you are pretty much doing whale hunting, right? 1:100 is probably a good ratio. One marketer is trying to reach out to 100 companies, right? That's a 1:100. You call it 1:few ABM. And then there is the that's the 1:1. Then there's the 1:few. 1:few could be something like 1:600 or 1:800, something like that, right? And this 100 can even be 25. There is also 1:1, 1:25 is also fine, depending on the size of the companies that you target. And then there is the 1:many using ABM, which is could be 1:3,000, or 1:4,000. Anything beyond that, in my opinion, it's not even ABM. It is good old spraying and praying. Even a few thousand is like getting into the age. Now, how should you think about, is it 1:1, 1:few versus 1:many? It depends on the ASP of your product, like average selling price of your product. If you are, in my opinion, again, this is my theory, arguably people might agree or disagree. For you to be an ABM company, your ASP of your product or service should, in my opinion, be at least $18,000 a year. If it is like $2,000 a year, ABM will not work for you because the kind of effort that you put to bring a company in with $2,000, you wouldn't be able to reap the reward. So if it is $18,000, then you can actually run an ABM in a scaled fashion. And that could be your 1:many. If your ASP is like 60K to 100K to 150, then you do like 1:few. And if you are in the 500,000 million and more, then you do 1:1. So it depends on the ASP of what you are selling, which ABM strategy that you choose. Once you choose the ABM strategy, then that decides how many customers or how many prospects you want in your account target list. Now, you have your TAM and you know how many accounts you want in your account target list. Now the question is, how do you bring your total TAM into this smaller number? And the only way to bring that down is by adding the right filters. And intent, in my opinion, is a key filter to it, right? And there are additional filters that we talked about. There are also proxy filters that people put, right? Like, for example, how do you know if a company is growing their revenues? The easiest way to know it is, are they hiring people? Because to support X dollars, you need Y number of people. So if you go and look at your data solutions, take ZoomInfo or any products, the offerings that you have. It's any products that you take, you will have filters like growing at X percentage, right? That's a filter. So you can mark and say, my account target list should be growing at least 10%. So that is a proxy of whether they are actually growing revenues, right? So you can even identify some of the proxies. If you identify the right proxies, then that could be very solid filters that you can apply. So you add the basic filters, you add the proxies, then you add the intent filters, and then you bring down your TAM into this target list. And then with that target list, you run your ABM campaign. And your ABM campaign is defined in whatever way, form, or shape, right? For some, the ABM means advertising. For some, it means email content syndication. For some, it means newsletters. For some, it means webinars. For some, it means conferences. It could be anything, but that's up to your activation and orchestration plans for the account target list. But that's how you should use data to drive your ABM.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Without the right data, and also the right data sources, where this data came from, and you have to make sure that you validate where this data came from, because again, it's like what you mentioned. There are so many data sources out there in the website. My next questions are just going to be, since we're discussing about the go-to-market, the strategy here, intent data to a lot of data providers are very, very expensive, because um, it it covers a lot of, coming from the firewall to the boardroom up until the download, the content consumptions, where the signal's coming from. Now, a lot of organizations are, let's say, about small businesses, SMB to mid market. Now, if they cannot afford what they call the intent data to be able for them to ensure that, again, they have the right filters and signals to target their target account, what is your recommendations for this kind of market segments? Because a lot of them, I would, based on my previous engagement, they're trying to target the white space as much possible. You would like to go to the white space, but what is your, I would say, 2 to 3 recommendations for this kind of market segment?
So let me make sure I understand. Is the question that intent data is expensive, and what would the smaller companies do if they cannot get access to intent data?
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see intent or signal-based selling is the future, right? And when something is the future, what happens is the cost of intent data will keep coming down. If you look at what was the cost of intent data 2 years, 3 years back versus now, some places it has increased, but overall the access to intent data has actually increased, and the cost of the data has reduced for most parts. So if you can, there are several ways for you to find intent data at a lower prices as well. But having said that, what I have seen, we have strong data behind this, right? When most of the companies or most of the SDRs, most of the salespeople or even marketing people, when they are leveraging the data providers, they use only an average of 4 filters. So the data says 73% of the search sessions that marketers or salespeople are running, they only put 4 filters. And these are basic filters, right? Location, things like title, employee range, and something more, right? These are like the 4 filters that people usually put. And the location is something like United States, right? Employee range is something like 100 to 5,000 or 100 to 10,000. So people are simply putting these 4 filters and then running their searches. And they end up with huge amounts of accounts and prospects that they have to target. So for people who cannot afford intent data, my simple suggestion is you have so many other filters that you have never touched. If, like, let me ask this to the people who are listening, right? How many filters do you think these data providers have? Take a guess. People are using 4, 73%, they are using 4. So how many do you think they have? Is it 10 filters, 20 filters, 50 filters? The vendors have more than 100 filters, right? So it's like a lot of filters that you have to play around with. You just use 4 out of the 110, 130 filters that are available to you, right? So all you have to figure out is what is the best proxy for you to figure out if there is a propensity to buy. And I can throw a bunch of examples. So it's like uh, champion moves is a very, very strong indicator of propensity to buy. For example, Vincent or Henson. Henson has bought from me in the past, right? And Henson moved from his previous company to the new company. When I started my new company, I reached out to Henson. Hey, Henson, do you want to talk? Because Henson and I have a trust going back to each other, right? So Henson was my champion. So champion move is like probably one of the strongest ways in which you can reach out to people. How many companies leverage this? All they have to do is go into their CRM, take the closed one list and look at everybody who they have engaged in the existing closed deals or even closed lost deals or even opportunity deals, and then make that into an Excel sheet and then go look at how many of them have moved. Very easy. Try to put that into an email validation. You will get a lot of bounces. Then you know that those guys have changed their jobs. Or
Yeah.
go search them on LinkedIn. You will find that they have all changed their jobs. Then look at their new company. There is a very high likelihood that the new company will potentially be a customer to yours because people move from one job to another when there is some form of familiarity for them. So the new company might end up being a customer for you. All you have to do is find the email of that person. You get that data everywhere in all the data providers. Just reach out to them. You can use LinkedIn, you can use their email, phone, whatever. Reach out to them and just say, hey, Henson, you remember us talking about product X at this company. Thanks a lot for being the customer there. I would love to see if we can help you out in this new company as well. And then that initiates a conversation. You end up getting a bunch more customers, right? So that's a very easy thing where you identify a proxy, which is an intent, and then use that. There are other proxies that people know about, right? The executive hires, fundraising, office openings, growth. All of these are very, very strong proxies that you can use to reach out and figure out. The real success, if you want to be extremely good at your outreach and conversions, then what you need to find is what is your unique proxy that you can find. If you find that, then I'll give an example. When I was running my last company, I found that if they are using one out of the 4 softwares, then my likelihood of making that sale was much higher. So that was the proxy that I found. I don't need to find intent. I don't have access to intent data or anything like that. But if they were using one out of the 4 softwares, which I identified, I can go and talk to them. There is a very high likelihood that they will buy my product. And what I did is, once I found that out, I built even deeper integrations with those 4 products. And then I went to those 4 companies and tried to partner with them on content, which I ended up successfully doing, right? So these are all ways in which you can do, and the data providers support you to do this. You just have to find the right way, even if you don't have direct access to the so-called intent.
Thanks for sharing that, Arjun. I know there are also salespeople that are listening to the webinar, and I've also see a lot of them when they sign up. So I think they could be able to uh, take you and put it into strategy. And I like
I hope
that.
so.
Thanks for that, Arjun. Yep. Actually, it's well, that is, I think, one of the challenges as a sales is to be able for them to, one is to engage with the right um persona at the right time with the right intent to purchase the product. It's so hard nowadays, just like what we have said, only about 2% are in market. A lot of them is out market. So as a business, we have to make sure that we are both creating and capturing demand to be able for us to target both of this segment of the customer that we're targeting. All right. In terms of data governance, Arjun, I know it's really hard to keep up to date about, if you have about um, a lot of customers coming in, and you're also trying to track, who visited your website, who chatted you on the chatbot, and who goes into your CRM. So I kind of like to understand also in terms of data governance, how should we be able, or how should organization should seamlessly integrate all of these data sources in order for them to use this wisely?
Yeah. See, the easiest way to think about it is what is your um, unified place where you govern the data, right? Like, and it could be different for different companies. The most important thing that you've got to take care is if somebody is unsubscribing from you, you need to propagate that across your company, right? For example, if somebody unsubscribed from your marketer, then how do you make sure that that unsubscription is kind of propagated across the rest of your stack, right? So it's a it is a complex problem. Thankfully, in US, it is less cumbersome, or the people are more open to getting these outreaches. Like in 2015, I remember when I reached out to people through an automated fashion, I used to get stingers back saying that, why are you reaching out to me, this and that. But in 2020, nobody cared, right? Everybody knew that it was automated and everybody was okay with that. So in US, it is less problematic, but in a place like Europe, it's very, very problematic if you are not reaching out with the right legal basis to engage with these people. So the way I have managed it, or I've seen other companies manage it, is by using like a marketing automation platform or like an emailing platform that has the ability to manage different subscriptions and different legal bases for handling the data. And then when you are entering the contacts into these databases, you make sure that you also enter the legal basis for which with which you are processing that data. And are they a marketable contact? Are they non-marketable contact? And you tag them in the right ways. Because if they have downloaded a piece of the content and if they have given you consent to reach out to them, that's obviously a marketable contact. If you are just taking the data from elsewhere and putting it into your marketing automation platform, then that's not really a legal basis to send them mass email. You can reach out one-on-one to that person through your individual email, but you are strictly legally speaking, you cannot reach out to them through a mass email. So just taking care of these basics will go a long way, like including your unsubscribe link in your outreaches, putting your address in the right way in your emailing systems. So there are these basic things that you have to take care from when it comes to data governance. And then, if you're a really big company, then I'm sure that you have the teams to kind of take care of. You have your privacy team, compliance team, and all of that to take care of all of these additional problems. But that problems come when you're a big company. When most of your SMBs and mid-market companies, you just have to take care of your CAN Spam Act, the basics of GDPR, consent management, unsubscribes, and you'll be on the right side.
All right. Thanks, Arjun, for that. I think that is a good reminder. Just like what you have said, there's a different law between US and Europe. And then we really have to make sure that we are GDPR compliant. I think across US states, I think it is observed whenever you send an email, you have to make sure that you are given the customer the liberty to unsubscribe if they don't want to continue getting any information from the businesses. All right.
Yeah.
So I'd like also to understand, because right now, just like what we have said, there are now a number of tools available in the market to be able for us to ensure that we could be able to have a data management. Based on what you have seen so far, what is the best, if not the best, what would you recommend the type of software the business should use to be able for them? One is to ensure that they integrate, AI thing in the world, and at the same time the ML to ensure that they strike the balance between collecting and then processing this data.
Yeah. So the question is, what is a good data management platform to handle the future and to make sure the data is future proof?
Yep.
Yeah, I wish I had an easy answer for that question. The needs of every company when it comes to data management is very, very different. And also there are different kinds of data, right? Data is such a loaded term. Data management is even more a loaded term. There is the customer data. They already are our customer. We have legal basis to process their data. We can reach out to them. We have legal basis for that. There is prospects, which is, they could be customer. The legal basis is that there is potentially a business interest for them to engage with you, right? So there is prospects. And then there is all the rest of the data your company is generating because you are operating, right? Because these are your call recordings and your billings and accounting and all of the additional data that you as a company are generating. So like when it comes to data management, each of these are like very, very different. Um, Most of the companies, and again, this is also different when it comes to B2C versus B2B, right? I can talk about either, but let's focus on B2B since we have been talking B2B for this long. Um, on the B2B side, most of the companies that I know, they are taking a direction where they are operating with a data warehouse, and they are making the data warehouse as kind of their CDP, the customer data platform. And the data warehouse is like snowflakes of the world, right? Snowflake
Yeah.
is probably the most widely used system where companies are kind of taking and putting all of their data. And the thing about Snowflake is they are it's taking all the data. It's taking the prospect data, it's taking the customer data, it is taking the the data getting generated within the company, and all of this is going into Snowflake. Almost all the systems, like starting from Salesforce and every system, right? They are pushing the data into Snowflake with some latency, like it could be 3 hours, 6 hours a day, whatever is that latency, the data is going into Snowflake. So most of the companies are actually handling this with, I mean, again, I'm talking about slightly bigger company, let's say mid-market and above is this model where they need something to manage their data and they use like a Snowflake. And then they probably put an orchestration platform on top of that. And they do bidirectional sync between Snowflake and there are, if you are like a lot of companies use Segment, both on B2B and B2C front, because Segment is a platform where you can move data. So as you are advancing, Segment could be like that phase where you can handle it. If you're a smaller company, then for most parts, your CRM ends up being your unified data management platform. Salesforce, if you look at Salesforce, it's not really a CRM anymore. It is more like your unified data place. You also track your deals there, but it's mostly your unified data. So depending on what scale of your company, you have to decide, what is the kind of data management that you need. But it's probably a combination of CRM, marketing automation, and then eventually evolving into something like a data warehouse and orchestration on top of it.
All right. Yeah, that's a very good illustration on how should the business take a look at their data governance and architecture. I appreciate
Yeah.
for giving your context on that, Arjun. Yeah, I'd like also to double down because when I look at the data market right now, a lot of organizations are trying to choose which vendor to engage with in terms of getting the data and then pushing through with their CRM or giving it to their sales team to do an outreach and such. I'd like to get your idea because not all data providers are the same. All data could pitch in similar ways, but no two organizations are the same. If you're going to advise someone to be able for them, hey, this is the right way on how you could be able to use the data sets coming from data provider, what would your recommendation be? That's number one. And number two is um, what is the pitfalls if the organizations solely rely on the data providers just to ensure that one, they have they're thinking that they have the right data, and then they could be able to put their company or the brand in front of that customers.
Yeah. It goes back to the use case quite a bit, and I'll give some examples, right? If you are a heavily cold calling kind of a company, if you see most of your conversions come through cold calls, then what you need is mobile numbers, right? That's where the most of your conversion is going to come through. And you need to have a data vendor who has the highest access to quality mobile numbers at that point. Um, in my experience, most of the advanced data leveraging companies in today's world, they are multi-sourcing, right? They have, so see, for a company to run a full data-driven outreach, you need a bunch of different kinds of data. You obviously need the contact data of the person. You need the company data. You need the intent data. And intent data is, you need the technographics data. you need the intent data, and the intent data could mean different, right? Top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, that could mean different things. And there are several different kinds of people need website visitor intelligence data, who is visiting, so IP to company resolution data. Some people need cookie to mobile device ID data. Some people need social ad data. So there are several kinds of data that you could use, and depending on what kind of a company you are, you might be using anywhere between 4 to 7 kinds of data. Now, the probability of you going to get all of this from one vendor is very limited. We all know ZoomInfo is probably the biggest, and they have the highest breadth of the data. But even for companies using ZoomInfo, they do use something like a G2 or a Trust Radius or a Capterra or something like that, right? Because that data is different and not something that ZoomInfo is providing. So multi-sourcing is one way to go. I think that most of the data-driven companies are going there. How do you choose the vendors? It's a combination of a few things. First of all, what are the kinds of data that you're looking for? Secondly, what is the pricing appetite that you have, right? Because there are different prices. The quality of the data, I wouldn't say it is always 100% directly proportional to the price that you pay, but there is certainly a correlation between the price that you pay and the quality of data that you get. See, at any point in time, you are paying in some form or fashion. Like imagine that you have a vendor that is very expensive, but they can give you, if you're looking for 100 people, you get like 43 people's phone number from that particular vendor. And then there is another vendor who is way less expensive, but you will only get 27 phone numbers out of 100, right? So you are losing out on the rest. Now imagine a case where there are inaccuracies in the data. So at that point, what happens is you will have bounces. When your bounces go above 12%, when it goes above 15%, then you are actually risking your domain a lot, right? So your domain, what do you call it? Authority. Yeah, the domain authority that you have, it'll fall off the cliff. So you don't want to have like 20% bounce rates. If you are making an SDR sit down and make the calls, and if the connect rate is poor, or if you are reaching the wrong people, then you are spending money by paying SDR salary. So you have to think about how you are leveraging the data and where you are spending your resources, whether it is about paying the vendor, whether it is about paying the person who is actually activating the data. And then depending on that and the kind of data that you're looking for, you make a list of the top 3 vendors. And you have to go check it out and see if they are serving the kind of data that you want. If you want to be really data driven, then what you do is you take a small list from all these vendors and actually run a campaign, right? You make somebody sit down and make 100 calls from vendor 1, 100 calls from vendor 2, and 100 calls from vendor 3. Your connect rate, if the connect rate is like 4%, that is decent. If it is 8%, it's amazing. If it is 1%, it's not good, right? So you kind of figure it out from there.
Yeah, I think that is a good way to be able to assess the effectiveness of the data and the accuracy of the data coming from different vendors. I think that is also a good way to which vendor you would like to engage in the long term. I think we've also done this before. We tried to, so the funny thing right now is you could be able to download sample data, right? When you go to specific vendor, just put your email address, and then you could be able to get 10 to 15 data, and then you could be able to run that through your CRM or just by your email address, and then if the phone numbers are available. I think these are also the good things to look at. I have 2 questions, Arjun, but I'm also conscious of the time. One is, the last 2 questions going to be, when looking at, so I know you've mentioned this earlier. I just want to double down on this. So you mentioned that when we're looking at the right, let me just get my thoughts from here. When you're looking at the right signals, or how can we identify the right signals in terms of the buying intent, because as we have the customer journey is really the customer journey is not linear, right? It's like in spaghetti. They can go from A to Z.
Yeah.
Uh, How could you be able, as a business, how could you be able to identify which is the right signals across the customer journey that we have to engage them? I just wanted to get your thoughts because I like the idea of incorporating intent across the customer journey and how we could be able to do that in a more precise way.
Yeah, I don't think the answer to that question is widely different from what we have been discussing. I think that the way you think about integrating intent into your whole customer journey, right from like an awareness stage to, all the way to close one stage, you just map out that customer journey, and at any given point in time, you figure out where are these people hanging out to make to get to the next step of their process, and then see if you can get an intent data as a proxy to their propensity to buy, and then go by that intent data, right? So it's very, very similar to the answer to your question, Vincent, on this one. In my opinion, is very similar to what I have been explaining, where you take the customer journey, how are they getting aware of the solution? Or how are they thinking about problem? Do they go to conferences and learn about this problem and solution? Or are these people who are going into, like attending webinars, or are these people reading newsletters? Depending on the product that you sell, right? If you are selling a manufacturing solution, the way in which your buyers are learning about new things is very different from if you are in a tech sector, right? So you have to first figure out where are your customers hanging out. And then the next thing is there a way for me to reach out to the place where they are hanging out? Then the thing is there a way in which I can find a proxy or an intent data that indicates when they are hanging out? So intent, in my opinion, is an indicator of a when than a who. Who is like your ideal customer persona, right? Who can buy? And then intent is like the when. When should I reach out is what the intent signal is answering. So once you map out that journey and figure out where they are hanging out, then you figure out the proxies and intent that matters to each of that phase. Then you try to incorporate it into your activation. So I don't want to explain it once more, but if there is something specific that you want me to double click on, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that we double down on that because again, when we look at the customer journey, uh, a lot of a lot of a lot of a lot a lot of a lot there are multiple ways on how to put this on the current tech stack of the organization. Just wanted to double down on that. All right.
Of course.
Yeah. So as um yeah, so my last question is gonna be I'd like also to get your idea because as the market is changes, a lot of moving items are goes with the changes. What is your take in terms of what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years from now? Because again, we have seen uh, the uh, the AI thing in the world. So what is how would you like the market, let's say, in the next 5 to 10 years to be will?
Yeah. Um, I do not believe that anybody is in a position to guess the next 10 years in this space. If anybody is able to do it with precision, then that's something. I don't pretend that I know the next 10 years. See, some things are common, right? The signal-based selling is going to be even more prevalent than it is right now. AI is going to change a lot of the things that we are seeing now. So there are some overall trends that will kind of shape the next 5 to 10 years. But what exactly would happen in 10 years, I don't think I know. But if you look at the different phases of the funnel, I think the obvious things that would happen is AI is going to play a key role in every phase of that funnel, starting from at the top of the funnel at the awareness stage, right? There are already companies like Jasper or copy.ai that helps people to write content, to write ad copies and things like that. There are companies like adcreative.ai and some other companies who are helping marketers create ad copies and creatives and things like that. There are companies that are creating videos, automated generated videos. Like people are using all kinds of AI systems to create everything that they need for running an ad. Almost every single advertising company is incorporating AI for automated optimization of ads. So, everything that you used to do in terms of the bidding, the bid rate, optimization, campaign bidding, all of that, which to some extent, machine learning was already guiding them. But you will see AI playing a lot more role in terms of the optimizations that it has to do. What that means is the complexity of running different kinds of ads. I'll give an example. How much should you spend on LinkedIn versus Facebook versus display? Very quickly, if you think about it, you will just look at the conversion and the CPL, cost per lead, and you will choose that, oh, you know what, Facebook is giving me an amazing CPL, so let me move my budget to Facebook. But when you are data driven, what you would look at is, if there is a lead that is creating from Facebook, what is the conversion all the way through to the close one stage? And what is the ACV that you are generating out of that lead? If you do that whole math, then what you would find is, oh, display is probably better, or LinkedIn is probably better, right? At that point, you have to choose to move it back to LinkedIn. But today, humans are making these calls by looking at and sifting through all of this data, and it is very, very difficult to do it given the difficulty in attribution and stuff like that. So all of these things AI is going to take care, right? So the top of the funnel will be optimized in a really big way. The efficiency will improve there. But and keep going down, for the SDRs, the emails are going to be written by AI. The follow-ups are going to be automatically generated by AI. The personalization at scale will be done by AI. The calls will be made by AI. There are already systems that are making the cold calls and then transferring it to the right people at the right time. So you keep going down the funnel, and we are at time, so I'm trying to go fast. So it's you will see this transition happening. But what I am also curious to understand now is, when AI gets into each of these spaces, the efficiency of each of these spaces will increase. But this efficiency increase will be common across all the companies that are out there, which means that the efficiency increase for everybody together will reduce the overall efficiency, right? So what would happen to these already saturated channels? That is going to be very interesting. In my opinion, the companies that are using AI and the companies who are able to really do like a sales and marketing alignment, like the unified funnel, as I call it, if both of those things together in the short term, let's say next 1 to 4 years or 1 to 5 years, those companies are going to make a lot of movement in the right direction as far as the go-to-market is concerned. For those companies who are not doing these two, their efficiency will drop, and they'll find it even more difficult to reach out to the buyer.
All right. Thanks, Arjun, for that. Really appreciate that. Any last word, Arjun, before we close the webinar?
No, this was awesome. Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks for all the questions. I love diving deep into some of these things. I mean, almost everything that I mentioned, it has got an additional double click and going deeper and then going into more actionable things, which I hope to do at some point of time with the team. But it has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. Again, thanks again, Arjun, for the time. I really appreciate, and also for being the guest for today. I'd like also to say that this webinar is being advertised by or sponsored by Machintel. We are a digital marketing solutions provider that offers comprehensive and cost-effective marketing solutions for brands, agencies, tech platforms, and publishers. Again, Arjun, thanks for joining us, and everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, Arjun.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Machintel's data-driven approach. We've discussed the importance of data in today's marketing landscape, but having data isn't enough. It's about using it effectively. Machintel excels in this. Our offering includes data from 275 million contacts across 152 million companies, spanning 190 countries. We make sure the data is precise and relevant to your needs. Data continued. It's not just about quantity, but quality. Machintel's custom intelligence segments your audience, ensuring your campaigns are effective across different channels. Our ID graph technology integrates different data sets, providing a clearer picture of your audience. With 6 million profiles updated daily, Machintel ensures you're always working with fresh and relevant data. The digital world is complex, but with the right data partner, you can navigate it more easily. Machintel is here to help. If you want to enhance your existing data, or if you're looking for better ways to reach your audience, let's work together. We appreciate your time today and hope to work closely with you in the future.